First, let's name what we're talking about, because comparison and jealousy are not the same thing, and conflating them keeps us from understanding what's really happening. Now, jealousy is about threat. Someone has something you want, and you're afraid of losing your shot at it. It's emotional and immediate. Comparison is more insidious. It's cognitive. It's a running calculation you do against other people's visible lives, in their timeline, in their progress, in their apparent ease, and it produces a verdict about where you stand. Welcome to The Change Effect, the podcast that helps you turn life transitions into powerful new beginnings, one story, one shift, one breakthrough at a time. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, leadership coach, and change strategist who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders break through barriers to create success on their own terms. I now work with women to step into change to create a life they love. Whether you're putting yourself at the center of your own story, redefining success, or making a power pivot in your life, career, or business, you're in the right place. Each week, we dive into conversations with trailblazers, changemakers, and everyday women experiencing the ripple effects that come from overcoming the fear and doing it anyway, providing actionable steps, practical strategies, and a whole lot of fun along the way. So if you're ready to step up and become unstoppable, buckle up and let's get started. I want to start today with a confession. I have picked up my phone at 11 o'clock at night, scrolled through someone else's highlight reel, and felt something sink in my chest. Not envy exactly, something worse. A quiet voice that says, "She's further along than you. She's figured it out. What are you waiting for?" If you've never felt that, this episode might not be for you, but I'm guessing most of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Today, we're going deep into the comparison trap. What it actually is, why it hits women differently, why it's especially destructive when you're in the middle of building something new, and how you can flip it from a weapon you use against yourself into a tool that actually helps you. Okay, let's dive in. First, let's name what we're talking about, because comparison and jealousy are not the same thing, and conflating them keeps us from understanding what's really happening. Now, jealousy is about threat. Someone has something you want, and you're afraid of losing your shot at it. It's emotional and immediate. Comparison is more insidious. It's cognitive. It's a running calculation you do against other people's visible lives, in their timeline, in their progress, in their apparent ease, and it produces a verdict about where you stand. And here's what makes it especially brutal for women. We've been socialized to measure ourselves relationally. Where do I stand in relation to her? How does my life look next to hers? Men are socialized to compete against a standard, a score, a rank, a goal. Women are socialized to locate themselves in relation to other women. Now, that's a different psychological operating system, and social media was essentially built to exploit it. Now, layer on this, if you're in a period of transition, building something new, leaving something behind, in the in-between, you're especially vulnerable because transition is inherently uncertain, and you don't have a clear marker of progress. So you look outward for reference points, and what you find on social media is a curated stream of other people's arrivals. Not their messy middles, not their 3 a.m. doubt spirals, just the launches, the milestones, and the wins. Comparing your inside to someone else's outside is always a losing game. But when you're in transition, it can feel unbearable. So how do we get out of this when it begins to surface? Well, before talking about how getting out of it, we need to dismantle some of the stories that keep the trap in place. Now, here's myth number 1. Comparison is a sign of weakness or insecurity. It's not. It's a sign that you're human and wired for social calibration. Your brain uses social comparison as a navigation tool. It helps us understand where we stand, what's possible, where the edges are. The problem isn't that you compare. The problem is the specific way comparison gets weaponized when you're in a vulnerable position. Calling yourself weak or feeling it just adds shame to the pile. It's just not useful. Myth number 2. If you were truly confident, you wouldn't compare yourself to others. This is one of the most damaging myths in the personal development world. Even highly confident, deeply grounded women experience comparison anxiety. Confidence doesn't eliminate the instinct. It just changes what you do with the feeling when it shows up. Confident women notice the comparison, get curious about what it's telling them, and then return to their own lane. They don't transcend the feeling, but they don't get stuck in it either. Now, myth number 3. Social media is just noise. You can ignore it. Now, you can limit it, you can curate it, but you cannot just decide to be immune to it. The platforms are designed by behavioral scientists to trigger exactly the responses we're talking about. Infinite scroll, social proof signals, It's not a coincidence that you feel worse after 20 minutes of Instagram. Telling yourself to just not let it bother you is like standing in a rainstorm and deciding not to get wet. Awareness helps, intention helps, but willpower alone doesn't. Now, myth number 4, wanting what she has means you're on the wrong path. Now, sometimes this might be the case, but not always. The feeling of comparison often contains real information, a signal that something you saw activated a genuine desire in you. That's worth examining. The question isn't just, why do I feel bad? It's, what does this feeling want me to know? Sometimes the answer is that you're grieving a path you didn't take. Sometimes it's that you're closer to what you want than you think. And sometimes it's that you've been underestimating yourself. The feeling isn't the enemy. What you do with it is everything. And then finally, there's myth number 5. And that's, the women we're comparing ourselves to aren't comparing themselves to anyone. They absolutely are. The women whose life looks effortless on your feed is probably scrolling someone else's highlights at midnight too. This doesn't mean you should feel better because others are suffering. It means the performance of ease is universal. And comparing your reality to someone else's portrayal of success is never going to give you accurate data. So here's the specific damage I want to name, because this is the piece that costs women the most. Comparison doesn't just make you feel bad. It distorts your sense of time. When you're watching someone else's progress, your brain starts running an unconscious calculation. She's launched 6 months ago and already has X. I've been at this for a year and I'm only at Y. Therefore, I'm behind. Something is wrong with me, and I should either speed up dramatically or reconsider the whole thing. And this is simply a lie. And it's a particularly expensive lie because it causes women to either abandon things prematurely before they've had time to find their footing, or sprint in a way that's unsustainable and ultimately break something important. Every timeline is singular. The only timeline that is relevant in your life is your own. And the most important question isn't, are you keeping pace with her? It's, are you moving? Are you making decisions? Are you building something that belongs to you? That's the measurement that matters. So with this said, how do we flip this script? Let me first say, this isn't about deleting all your apps. It's about changing your relationship with comparison so it stops working against you. Let me share a few strategies. First, name it when it happens. The comparison spiral moves fast, and it usually runs below the level of conscious thought. The first move is to slow it down enough to see it. When you notice that sinking feeling after scrolling, say it out loud. I'm comparing myself to her right now. And here's what I'm making it mean. The act of naming it interrupts the automatic loop. And remember, you can't change a pattern you can't see. Next, get curious instead of critical. When comparison shows up, treat it like a message rather than a verdict. Ask, what specifically am I responding to? What does this tell me about what I actually want? Is this about her, or is this about something I haven't let myself want out loud yet? 9 times out of 10, the comparison is less about her and more about something unresolved in you. So get curious about it. It's far more useful than self-criticism. The next is use her as data, not as a standard. This is the reframe that changes everything. When you see a woman doing something impressive, instead of measuring yourself against her, ask, what can I learn from this? What does her path tell me about what's possible? And what would I need to do differently to get the result I want? You've just converted a threat into a resource. She's no longer the standard you're failing to meet. She's proof of concept for something you might want to build. Next, audit your feed with intention. You are not obligated to follow anyone who consistently makes you feel like you're falling short. Unfollow, mute, or take breaks without guilt. This is not avoidance, it's curation. Your attention is a resource. Where you put it shapes what you believe is possible and what you believe about yourself. So be sure to protect it. Follow women who expand your sense of what's available, not women who make you feel like you're perpetually behind. The next is build your own scorecard. If you don't define what progress looks like for you, you'll default to measuring yourself against someone else's definition. So get specific. What are 3 signs that you're moving in the right direction this month? Not outcomes, but actions, decisions, behaviors. Check in against your own scorecard regularly. This gives your brain a concrete reference point that belongs to you, not to someone else's highlight reel. And last but not least, create more than you consume. This one is practical and powerful. The comparison spiral is almost always triggered by consumption. Scrolling, watching, reading. When you notice you're deep in it, close the app and create something. Write a paragraph, make a voice memo, sketch an idea, reach out to someone. The act of creating immediately shifts you from passive observer to active builder. and builders don't have time to compare. They're just too busy making things. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. You're not going to stop comparing yourself to other women. That's not the goal. The goal is to change what the comparison does to you. Right now, for a lot of women, comparison functions as a slow drain, a constant background noise that makes everything feel slightly insufficient. The work is to convert it from the drain to a signal. And signals are useful. They tell you things. They point you toward what you want. They illuminate the gap between where you are and where you're going. The change that sticks is about building a different default. Every time you catch the spiral and redirect it toward curiosity, toward your own scorecard, toward creation, you're rewiring the habit. That takes repetition, patience, and a willingness to be in your own lane even when someone else's lane looks more attractive. Now, here's what I know. The women who build the lives they want are not the ones who never compare. They're the ones who've learned to come back to themselves faster. They feel the pull, they notice it, and they return to their own work. Every time. That's the practice. So just remember this when you begin to doom scroll. The comparison trap is a human response that's been supercharged by technology and amplified by the specific vulnerability of being in the middle of change. You are allowed to want what you want without measuring it against what anyone else has. You're also allowed to move at your own pace without it meaning you're falling behind. And lastly, you are allowed to look at other women's lives and feel inspired instead of diminished. It all starts with the decision to use what you see as proof that for you, anything is possible. That's it for now. Until next time. Thank you for listening to The Change Effect. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode, so more women like you can find us and take their next step toward creating a life they love.